Welcome. Welcome to the Citizen Advisory Committee's December 14th public hearing. I am going to ask that we have all visitors who are not committee members to turn off their videos and to mute themselves for the moment. We will have opportunities, if needed, for you to participate later in the hearing. So welcome to everybody else who is attending with us tonight, as well as possibly watching us virtually or through Everett TV channel or listening to us otherwise. So again, if you have just joined us, please make sure to, and you are not a committee member, please make sure to mute yourself and turn off your video. We are meeting tonight for the public hearing and having a virtual meeting for the Human Needs 2022 fund allocations. And I want to welcome everybody. My name is Kimber Landry. I'm the Community Development Manager, and I have with me Vicki Doorway, and she's our Community Development Specialist. And while I want to make it clear that while the Human Needs funds do not require a public comment period, we are going to still accommodate any comments or considerations for the funding recommendations that are made tonight or tentatively at tomorrow night's hearing. If we do not get to all of the funding recommendations tonight, you may email Vicki at vdorway@everettwa.gov. You can also visit us online on this community development web pages for the city and contact us through those means as well. And so with that, I'm now going to give it over to the chair to start us off.
Good evening. Welcome everybody who's here. It's wonderful to see so many dots with names attached. So sorry, can't see your faces, but hello and welcome. I'm going to call roll, and then I'm going to ask staff to identify themselves, and then we'll go over rules for procedure tonight. My name is Susan Mosshart. I am the chair currently, and I am present. Greg Campbell.
Here, I'm a committee member.
Thank you.
What else do you?
No, that's okay. Good. Sue Johnson.
Present.
Thank you. Demba Balde.
He was excused.
Thank you. Ben Breeden.
I'm present.
Thank you. Samantha Hassan.
She was excused.
Thank you. Larissa Knopp.
Here.
Hi. And Cathy Lynott.
I'm here.
Fantastic. So tonight, what we're going to do is we are going to have the staff, after they identify themselves, they're going to be making their presentation, and we're gonna, instead of doing it by pool, we're going to go by priority tonight. So if we remember what our community needs priorities are, they will structure it that way. So if the staff will please identify themselves, then we'll move forward.
So I'm Vicki Doorway, Community Development Specialist.
And Kimber Landry, Community Development Manager.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We can't do this without you. Okay, so if the staff would like to make their presentation for the 2022 program year and funding recommendations, that would be a wonderful way to start. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So welcome everyone. Once again, I know everyone's welcomed everyone, but we are glad that you're all here. And also glad for all of the applicants who were able to get their applications entered into our very exciting new grant management software system called Amplifund. So everyone did a great job, and just very exciting to have all those applications come in. Kimber and I were able to just download them earlier today into a file, and we didn't even print any of them. We just, they're in a file, and the committee members were able to read them, and we weren't doing binders and notebooks and all of that. So it's a very exciting time for us. And I know, there's always growing pains, but everyone has done a great job. So all the applications came in, and staff did kind of an initial view of the applications and put them in Amplifund, they call it the completeness queue. Some of the applications needed additional information or clarification. So we were able to get that, any incomplete information, or if we had questions on certain things, we would reach out to the agency and get those answered. And once we had it all complete, then we were able to move it to eligibility review. So staff would confirm the applications, make sure they were eligible, and then we were able to send them off to all of the wonderful committee members to start their review process. We did have a little bit of troubleshooting that we had to do related to scoring in Amplifund, but Amplifund has been so responsive and helpful, and they were able to get that resolved fairly fast. And so committee members were able to take some time to review all the applications and score them. So as most of you know, this is the first time that applications have been scored as part of this process. So each committee member was able to score on a scale of 1 to 5 within the categories of, there were 3 categories, how the applications or organizations, how it addressed the needs of the community, the organizational capacity to administer the funds or the grant, and then community engagement. And so the applicants were, the committee members were not able to see each other's scores. So it was kind of, they were able to review and score without any influence from other committee members. So that is exciting. So in regards to scoring, we did not end up having equitable distribution of scores among the applications. So some applications may have had 4 reviewers, some may have had 7 reviewers. And so in order to create a baseline for guiding the discussions around scores, staff decided we did an average score that was determined for each priority. And we'll be getting into that more in a little bit. This is just kind of a bird's eye view. Staff initially put applications into 3 different tiers. So tier 1 was kind of an above average score. A high priority was met, and it was a viable project, and those received a full award or recommended. Again, these are staff funding recommendations. So that's the tier 1. Tier 2 had a lower than average score, but it still met a high priority. And they were viable projects with considerations. And so those may have received a reduced award. Tier 3 was basically no award recommended. It was a low score, and it did not meet the priority, or there were other reasons that we were not able to fund those. So once staff reviewed all the applications and through this tier process, we looked at each individual project and reviewed it in coming up with our funding allocations based on funds available, and considered other factors such as organizational requests or elevating projects that carry forth citywide efforts, and other considerations. So we are, excited about this. But it is hard for staff to even come up with these funding recommendations. But we were able to kind of use a balance of looking at the scores, using the scores, but not exclusively going by scores, because there was not the equitable review of all the applications. So that's a little bit of a nutshell. We'll get into it more shortly, but as staff does, we get into each of the categories, and staff kind of talks about their recommendations. We will, after each subcategory, we'll be able to answer questions. So staff can answer questions, and then If we're not able to answer the questions, then we can follow up with applicants who are on this hearing virtually with us right now. So I think that's, Kemra, anything else you want to throw in there? Otherwise, that will conclude our kind of overall initial staff presentation before we get into the meat of the funding recommendations.
No additional comments from me. Great job, Vicki. Thank you.
Okay. So Susan, back to you.
Okay, so we're going to do the funding discussion and draft funding recommendations at this time. Again, if there's any questions, we'll go to staff first, and later we will, if the staff can't answer the question, we'll go to the actual agency to get clarification as needed.
So Chair, I'm going to start sharing our funding worksheet now. That's okay.
Fantastic, absolutely.
So when able, if everybody can give me a head nod if I see you, or a thumbs up, either, all those are good. Okay. So Vicki?
Okay, so we're starting, the first category is the homelessness category. And for that priority, we would like to discuss each subcategory separately. So staff will provide information on each recommendation, starting with the homeless health, homeless mental health, substance abuse. And then the committee can ask questions and discuss the recommendations for that subcategory and come up with a funding recommendation before we move to the next subcategory. The subcategories, you can see there's kind of a darker line, or obviously you see it changes from one like homeless health to housing and emergency shelter. So, and we'll just kind of, again, remind people, and Kemra, do you want to scroll down just a little bit? So the average score for each subcategory is at the bottom. So for the homelessness subcategory, the average score was 33.94, and that's out of 50. So again, each question or different parts of the application, the committee could give them anywhere between a 1 and a 5 scale based on the response. So you'll see the tan scores are those that were above the average, and then those that are just the regular same as the other parts of the Excel spreadsheet, those are ones that were below average. So it, for the most part, funding was done in regards to, those that were above average often got more recommendation, but as we mentioned, there were some different factors that came into things, so there is some flexibility in this. And again, this is the staff funding recommendations. So let me get started with some information on the Housing Hope Teen and Young Parent Program, and then the Child and Family Specialist. So those were both.
Vicki,
Pardon?
Sue has
Yes.
her hand up already. I don't know.
Okay,
if we,
so
sorry. Sue, you're
you're on
muted.
mute.
Sorry, quick question. Overall, do we have a sense of how many dollars were available versus how many we get to allocate? And then it does, so there's, and then in the past, we had sort of a mindset that we were trying to do full grants wherever possible, but it seems like that mindset might be different on this because it looks like a lot of partial grants. So just, those were just sort of general things as we're going into this, if we've shifted a bit on our perspective.
I can step in and help and address this if that's okay. So the total asks we do have at the bottom, we had about $664,224 in total asks. And we have about $451,200 available.
Okay, that really helps to have that perspective from the start. So thank you.
Yes. And then to address your second question, Sue, that is still the approach for full large awards is still something that we would like to move towards, especially this next funding year. And as we continue to look at additional awards for state and federal for next year, what we've done with this is have, as Vicki mentioned, starting points for discussions. And so if based on the baseline of these scores and trying to be equitable in kind of our review. And so if the committee as a whole is having discussions and you're seeing that there's one award that, you know, you would like to shift some funds from to augment another award so that we can give larger increases or that we can make those shifts, we're giving the committee some flexibility to do that. So we've started with just a baseline of here's where they all fall. Here are some of the considerations that staff have had with some of the projects, and how does the committee want to proceed with this funding recommendation? But thank you for bringing that to the point.
Well, it helps to have those parameters before we go through the individual. So I'll try and keep my questions limited, but that one seemed like it would be helpful. So thanks.
Great one. Thank you, Sue.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so the Teen and Young Parent Program is, and again, this is like a total nutshell, but just a slight refresher. It's the family support coaches for teen and young parents that are part of Housing Hope programs. And while it had a high score, the impact of the program is not as great as the impact of the child and family specialist. So the award was reduced so that we could fully fund the other request. So the one right below it, the child and family specialist, which provides specialized parenting support and child development. And so the recommendation for the teen and young parent program is $10,000, and the child and family specialist, their ask was $15,000, and staff is recommending $15,000. And then I'll just discuss the next two, and then we'll kind of break for questions and discussions. So for the domestic violence services program, that is staffing for children's services that assist youth at the shelter who have been impacted by domestic violence. It was a high score and a high priority. And it supports a high need group. So the staff recommendation was to fully fund that. So the Everett Recovery Cafe, they provide food and staffing to support the Recovery Peer Support Program. Many of whom are involved in that are coming out of homelessness. The score was lower than average, but it is a high priority, and so staff recommended a reduced award of $12,000. And that basically is the nutshell of the first subcategory under homelessness. So are there questions or anything that when you were reviewing applications that you had thoughts that came up or other information?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, the housing team, number 4 and number 5, the one with the lower score gets more money, and the subcategories look identical. I feel that should be justified somehow because there's a $5,000 difference just on the face of it, just looking at it. Someone would say, well, why is this getting more money? Because the score is lower. And just on that, I think that someone should step in and say why exactly, because they look like very similar programs to me.
I'll say something first, and Becky, you can add if not, and then
Okay.
also we can open this up for broader discussion. So when we initially reviewed these, they're both very strong projects. Housing Hope is a dynamic community partner, but the Child and Family Specialist has a larger impact for where the use of the funds will go. This is for a position that's going to serve multiple people, as opposed to the niche teen and young parent program position. And so you have what's seen as, this is why the discussion part is good. We're looking at scores and trying to talk about, some of these parameters. So even though it's a very high scoring application, they had great narrative, they were able to address the questions really well. The impact for the use of funds is greater with the Child and Family Specialist than it is for the Teen and Young Parent Program. That being said, it's definitely worth discussion with the committee if you'd like to change that funding recommendation. So.
Well, I'm just saying, on the face of it, we obviously as a group have decided that Housing Hope Teen and Young Parent is more pertinent than Housing Hope Child and Family Specialist, according to our scores. And staff is saying something different.
We have to also
that's-
remember that we don't have equitable review of all scores. So we need to use the scores as a baseline, but then also think about the fact that not everybody on this committee may have reviewed this application. And so as a committee, would you all like to discuss this application a little bit further and start to kind of dive into some of the, discussions for the funding allocation?
That would be a little difficult right at this point, because we have finished our work and it's not in a binder that we can flip to the page any longer. So I don't know if that's even plausible at this point, but maybe I'll just step back and see what happens. But if that's an example of how this is going to go, a lot of people are going to have very valid questions about this system.
Can I step in for a second? I think what's really important to remember is the community impact. That wasn't something that we were asked to score on, but it is something that the staff has been aware. I mean, we're all aware of it, right? And so is that something that is part of the priority? And since we're using priority instead of pool, the community impact for the most money is something that we should probably keep in the forefront of our heads. And the fact that this is not an equitable, wasn't equitably reviewed. That is, I think, incredibly important to remember. So my 2 cents is done now. Thank you.
Sue, you're still muted if you're trying to speak.
It seems like the scoring also may have been skewed more towards the thoroughness of the application and did they jump through all the hoops? And that's one criteria. And then the next criteria is, okay, once we realize that, okay, this person really filled out their paperwork well, and they had a wonderful application, but, and the difference between 36 and 34.86 is only 1 point something or other, then you take it to the next step and say, okay, these two are approximately viable, but which one impacts? So that's where our scores are arbitrary numbers that give us a ballpark of filtering what seems to have met all the criteria, at least on paper, but then then the next step is to say, okay, it looks good on paper, but what's the impact? So Greg, that's where our scores are a tool, but they're not the end all be all. We could give something a 5, but
yeah.
it might not be as good. It may look really good on paper, but still another program that maybe we didn't score as high for some reason or another actually will use the bucks better. And we didn't really score for the ability to use the bucks the best.
That's right.
So
we
that's how
graded
we can justify it.
Did we just grade papers? Is that what we did?
Well, no, but I mean, we were grading, were they a viable project? But then now we're taking it one notch farther. You know, that's why this discussion helps, because the committee has insights that we can't necessarily tell from just what it says on the paper. And again, the 15,000 represents a full grant for that one, and that does go by our previous pattern of fully funding projects when that will have a maximum impact. You know, I'm more interested in when we get down a ways to see some of these ones we didn't fund at all. But anyway, but just scoring doesn't give us enough data.
No.
I think if we get
agree.
hung up on the scores, we're missing the point.
Yeah, I kind of felt at the end of this work that I did, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, but I kind of feel like we were being pushed out a little bit of the decision making, because I felt like I was an English teacher again and just grading papers. And that's how I'm coming out of this. I feel that way a little bit. So
Thank you, Greg. That's good feedback. That's at some point we need to do follow-up for all this, but we were kind of planning on that for after all the funding allocations and when we can actually dive into Amplifund and everybody's had the chance to actually now work in Amplifund. I'm sorry to admit that we do have still a few committee members that may have not even logged in yet to Amplifund. And so this is also the first experience of everybody actually being able to be in the system. But thank you, and we will definitely have a good follow-up discussion on that later. So to get back to this point, is there anything else with the subcategory for funding recommendations?
Well, are we considering the rest of those that come along also as homelessness? Because you stopped at 4 and I'm not at the
Yes,
first
so
4.
the rest of these are all homeless subcategories, but before we leave that, we need to just see if there's anything that we'd like to go ahead and tentatively put in the funding recommendation to allow it for easier discussion later. Or if you guys just want to leave this blank and then just revisit everything later, we can, but we felt like it might be more efficient if we try to address some of the funding recommendations while we're in the same subcategory.
Well, I guess I'm confused how the top 4 are, what subcategory they are different from cocoon.
Homeless, health, mental health, substance abuse, and then the next ones are housing and emergency shelter.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay.
So these include other mental health issues.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
Okay. Now I see.
But these are different than services, because we do have a category coming up for services, and there is services mental health, but they aren't necessarily related to homelessness services.
Gotcha. Okay. Now it's clear. I was, okay.
I think we're good to move on if I'm not hearing any nays about that.
Well, I think
Should
her
we-
question is, do we want to bring their numbers across?
Okay.
I think we
Should I
can
do
tentatively
a roll
move them.
call? Should I do a roll call, or everybody wants to put a thumbs up for now?
Let's just do a thumbs up if we could just move those
It's just
into the
tentative, right?
recommendation.
Right.
It's our
Right.
first, yeah, let's
First
just
round. Yeah.
yeah,
plant the
okay.
flag in the ground here.
Okay. I like that.
Nope. Let's see. I'm trying not to move too fast. Let's see.
We're not voting on anything. We're just saying
No.
it's okay to move it over.
Correct.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Ready to move on to the next subcategory? This is a large one. So if you have, as I'm talking or anything, if you have any questions, maybe jot a note or something, or just keep in mind that this is the largest subcategory. So first one, the Cocoon House Journeys program. It provides housing and case management for shelter youth ages 18 to 24. It received a high score. It's a high priority, and it supports a high need group. So staff recommendation was to fully fund the Cocoon House Journeys program. So the first one, interfaith, this is the Cars to Housing program, basically case management for this program to help people move out of homelessness, kind of a safe place where they can basically live in their car as they are working with the case manager to get on their feet and get into more stable housing. That was a high score, high priority, and again, it supports a high need group. So staff is recommending that we fully fund that one. And then the next interfaith one, and there's a couple other interfaith ones that are going to come up, but they're not all together because they have different scores. So this one is their, it would be a new program, a scattered site emergency shelter program. And, you know, of course, it's a high score, it's a high priority, but there are some issues with land use, that land use approval could take a while. And so staff at this time is not recommending funding for this program, but definitely for, you know, encourage application in the future once all the land use concerns and all of that are resolved and it's more ready to go. So that one did not receive staff recommended funding.
Okay, okay. Got it, okay.
Okay, so the Cocoon House Connections program, actually, I should have talked about that one with the Journeys program because there's kind of a reason for that one that's tied to the Cocoon House Journeys. So the Connections program provides short-term housing at host homes for youth ages 12 to 17. Again, high score, high priority, but we did not feel that it had as high of an impact as the Journeys program. And so it was not funded so that we could provide full funding for the Journeys program. And again, not recommended for funding, I should say that. So the Faith Food Bank, the Faith Family Village is a new project. It's going to be pallet shelters, and this would fund case management at the pallet shelters. The score was lower than average, but it is a high priority. But the project is kind of in its early stages and it still needs to go through land use compliance. So we suggested a reduced award to be mindful of the time frame of when the funds need to be expended. So that one was recommended at $25,000. So let's see, American Red Cross, the Home Fire Financial Assistance Program. It has a lower than average score, and you know it is a need, but it's not serving chronic homelessness. It's more for those who are temporarily displaced due to home fires. So at this time, staff is not recommending that project be funded. Moving on to Vision Church. Vision Church is providing transitional housing, food, clothing, hygiene kits, and more. Their score was a little lower than average, but again, a very high priority. So staff, because they kind of applied for funding for so many different things, staff would recommend funding to be focused more on housing and food, since those are high city priorities. And so we did recommend a reduced award. of $20,000. That is lower than their reduced funding amount. And I see Sue has a question.
That was my question, is that the fact that it's lower than their 30,000 ask, but then is that going to be an issue?
So we did reach out if there were organizations that we were potentially going to recommend less than their reduced funding amount. We did reach out to organizations. We did not get a response, but we would come up with a contingency if they are not able to utilize a reduced ask, if they declined the award or because the 20,000 wasn't enough for what they needed, then we would set up a contingency to equally distribute those funds among those that were not fully funded but received awards, if that makes sense.
Well, could the committee have its discretion to have the contingency be one that you didn't fund?
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we need to know that we want to look at what we would do if they can't do it.
Yeah, Sue, I will add that the reason why we did do 20,000 for this specific award is because we went back to the budget and looked at the utilization costs for the housing and the food assistance specifically. And that's the reason why it's 20,000 is due to their budget. So we, to Greg's earlier point, we do have the applications downloaded. So if that's something that we want to pull up, then we can just pull that up real quick. So if we want to revisit the application, we can do so.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you determined that it's likely that the 20,000 would still work for them, even though they say 30, based on their budget.
We started with that based on the budget and went back to the agency to confirm and have not yet heard back from them.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
if the committee would like to take a different approach for that recommendation, that's totally okay.
All right, anything else related to that? Okay, so we mentioned that there were some unique situations and agency considerations. The Compass Health Emergency Motel Voucher Program is one of those. You do not see it on the screen right now, but one of the programs that we're going to discuss in a little bit is the Compass Health partnership with Cocoon House for counseling at Cocoon House. And we reached out to the agency about a reduced award for their Compass Health Cocoon House partnership. And they sound like they would prefer that instead of giving funds to the Emergency Motel Voucher Program, that they would prefer that the other program be able to be fully funded. Although emergency motel vouchers do, obviously meet a high need and a high priority. So that is up for discussion, but so staff did not recommend funding for the Compass Health Emergency Motel Voucher Program. Okay. So the other Cars to Housing program that Interfaith has, it is a lower than average score, but again, high priority, and it's supporting a high need group. And so staff is recommending that that be funded at the reduced asked amount of $15,000.
I do want to interject real quick and just do an interesting point with the scores, which is why equitable review is important. So if we look, this is the exact almost same proposal as their Cars to Housing Site 1. However, there's a 5-point spread in the score difference. So we have the exact same program from the exact same agency, but there is a 5-point spread in the score difference for that. We see that it's 35.80 versus 32. So, or no, I'm sorry, it's 37.14 versus 32.
Yeah.
So just keep in mind that equitable scores matter. So,
Yeah. And as I recall on Interfaith, their verbiage was practically the same on them. So that is a factor because they they answered the question similarly in each of their applications. So it does seem odd that the scores would be skewed, other than that you're not getting enough of them. So yeah.
Yes. There's something to keep in mind. Okay, give it back to Becky.
Okay. So we're at the last one for this category, this subcategory of housing and emergency shelter. This is St. Vincent de Paul, and they are requesting funding for hotel vouchers for people who are unsheltered. It has a lower than average score, a high priority. One comment is that it's a fairly simple program, so their application doesn't necessarily require elaborate answers. So that could be partially why the score is lower. But at any rate, staff is recommending that it get funded at their reduced ask amount of $20,000 for the hotel vouchers. So that concludes information from staff and funding recommendations for housing and emergency shelter. And we can open it up. I know we've had some discussion. If there's additional questions of staff or other information needed.
Well, it does seem that the St. Vincent de Paul picks up the slack if we don't give the other hotel voucher program funds. Then it does seem important to have some motel vouchers out there. So that would fill that void. So I'm glad to see that you funded at least one of those two.
Yes,
Sue, let me also add that the Compass Health program received a CDBG CV award for hotel vouchers also.
Oh, okay.
So even though this may not have been supported through Human Needs, it has been supported through another funding source.
Okay. And I guess on interfaith, same thing. We didn't fund one of them, but we did do the other because, getting people out of their cars and to the next step. And I do know that interfaith supports having support for, it isn't just we'll give you a parking lot. They have the mental health support that goes with making that transition. So,
But Sue, the reason the number 10 is because they're having a land use.
I understand that. So
Okay.
I'm glad that if we can't, again, it's the same
Yeah.
premise, that at least we're funding one of the two of those programs. So I'm thinking safety net, that if we can't fund all of them, we're not funding two is the point there. Pardon the double negative there, Greg.
So is everybody okay moving temporarily the numbers over as are presented at this time?
Just a caveat, do we want to, if Vision can't use the 20, does the committee want to just disperse it in this now, were you saying in this subcategory you disperse it, or would you be?
It can be anywhere.
Yeah.
And Ben has his hand up. Ben?
Yeah, thank you. I'm content at this point moving those recommendations into our funding recommendation at this point. I just wanted to make Vicki, your point about, or Kimbra, one of you, talking about St. Vincent de Paul. That was one that stood out in my mind as I was reading through the grant. It'd be worth making a note about that as we are developing this Amplifund, just because I remember reading through that thinking it was a very streamlined, simple proposal. I was reading it thinking it was very good, very helpful, but in using the scoring criteria, I was watching my own score as well, realizing that. So it's just something I wanted to make note of, that I know you said we're going to at some point do some debriefing and feedback. And that's part of the growing pains of this. And I'm glad to see that they got funding, because I was really pleased with their grant, even while I looked at my score like, oh, that's not what I thought it would have been. So.
Real quick, I do want to say that, Ben, thank you for that. While you were speaking, though, we did have Vision Church mention that they would be able to utilize the 20,000.
Oh, good. Okay. So should we do a thumbs up on?
Yeah.
Susan, maybe. Did everybody get the?
I
I
didn't
got
see-
it. Here's my
Okay,
thumb.
there's Greg's thumb. Okay.
There.
Vicki, it's back to you.
Okay. So the next subcategory is short. It's just 2 programs. The first one is the meal program coordination. This is not necessarily a Cocoon House program. They are the fiscal sponsor, but this is basically supporting a hot meals coordinator to support the Hot Meals Coalition. The score is a little bit lower than average, but it has a high priority and a large impact. Staff is recommending that it be fully funded.
We did have a brief $214 difference after making some of the allocations. So this one is $214 lower than what their full ask is, but
Oh, close enough.
99.98% otherwise.
Okay. Okay, I have the one that I printed a while ago. So yes, I did not look at the one on the screen. Okay, so slightly reduced. Okay, apologize for that. And so the next one, the Faith Food Bank, it's basically money for food for the Hot Meal Coalition to purchase the food and some of the staffing costs and things like that. It's again the same, a little bit lower than average score, but high priority and large impact. And so staff is recommending that that be fully funded.
Awesome.
So those are the 2 that we have under homelessness food services category.
Well, and the good news on food is, remember, if you've been on this committee a while, we used to have a lot of scatteredness and a lot of little programs, and they're now consolidating and operating programs that can be more efficient because they have that Hot Meal Coalition and they're coordinating programs. So it seems like it's a good fostering of our funds compared to, say, 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Cathy?
Yeah, I just wanted to second that. I agree with that. I love seeing the partnerships and the collaboration and the coordination. I think that's fantastic and a much better use of people and money. So that's great to see.
Any other comments?
Is that a yes to carry everything over? I only see a few thumbs. Everybody's a yes. Okay. Okay. Uh-oh, that one did a, it's not right. On technical difficulties.
Spreadsheets are so fun.
Okay. Keep me honest. Okay.
Okay, so since housing just has the 3 applications, I think we can have staff present on the 3 and then we can have discussion from there. So the first one is ARC of Snohomish County, and it supports those who have disabilities, developmental disabilities, and the program is basically wraparound case management to support in navigating all of the systems that need to be navigated for housing, food, all of that. So some of the funding is for the case management and then some for assisting people with utilities or food. It's a high score and a high priority, and the recommendation was to fully fund that one. And then moving on to the Washington Kids in Transition. So it's housing, financial assistance, and vouchers to support homeless students in the Everett School District. And the score was lower than average, but it's a very high priority. So staff recommended their reduced ask amount of $25,000.
Mm-hmm. Good.
And then Snohomish County Legal Services provides staff to help prevent eviction, and also helps with housing mediation. And high score, high priority, and staff is recommending that that one be fully funded. So Susan, are you able to?
Am I able to, do I come
take
back
over?
in now?
Because that's a very small category.
Right, so do we have any discussion on that? Are we all agreed to
Okay,
move the numbers over?
Okay, hang on,
Oh,
sorry.
oh.
Just on, okay, I'm still not all the way clear on why we're reducing the kids in transition. I realize we scored them low, but again, it just seems, I am a proponent of the legal services, but if you can have direct aid for rent, utility, and food access, it's, you know, there are some safety nets in place on the legal scene, at least right now. There's the eviction moratorium, although I guess those are ending soon, but I guess I'm sad to see the kids in transition only getting 25 out of 40. So I don't know. Anybody else?
Do you propose something? Would you like to take money from ARC, or how would you like to revamp that? And does everybody agree about that?
I want to just interject that you do not have to take it out of the same subcategory.
Oh, okay.
You can remove it from another award, but we will need to go back and revisit the other subcategories.
Right.
Or you can skip this one right now and then continue to move through and then revisit it. But
Well, I mean, you can, I mean,
Right.
I'm okay if you move them across, because later on we'll dicker a little bit, but I personally hate to see that one go all the way down to 25. That's just.
Cathy?
Yeah, I just from my end, working case management in the last couple of years, I know that those legal services are hard to get to, and any little bit that we can fund is really, really helpful to help people keep the housing that they have. Because once you lose it, it is incredibly hard to get housing again. So that's the benefit of the legal aspect, is to keep people that have housing housed.
So hearing that, I get, and I think ARC has a wonderful program. I'm thinking maybe I would have liked to have just made it more parity between those two, but I don't know I'm not strong on that, but if we're giving 140 and 125, could we meet in the middle a little bit?
If you would like to meet in the middle a little bit, I think you could take the 5,000 and still reach their reduced funding amount from the ARC. They would still have that 35, which is what they said they needed. And then you could bump up the Washington Kids transition just a little bit.
Yeah, I would like that.
It's not like a big difference, but it's a big difference to the Washington Kids in transition.
I would like to hear from the legal services sometime regarding their efforts towards avoiding eviction. Where does it go from there? I've often wondered that, and we no longer have them in the room with us like we used to ask them this. But is it just delaying eviction? I mean, eviction is not something that pops up and surprises renters. It's usually a long process.
well, Greg, I was going to say, let me stop you there, because we actually do have representatives from that organization here tonight, and so we can invite them to speak a little bit. But before we do, I saw Ben. Is your hand still raised for an item? Before we open it up for agency discussion, have all committee members brought their points?
I'll abstain at this point. I had a thought, but I'm okay at this point. So we can continue. I'm good.
Okay, at this time, then I would invite that if they're the representative from Snohomish County Legal Services, if you're able to unmute yourself and speak a little bit more on your process.
Yes, my name is Jane Pack, and I'm the Executive Director of Snohomish County Legal Services. So our goal, a lot of what we're doing is keeping people housed. And in our mediation, without getting into the details of the case, we negotiate settlements or agreements to keep people housed or additional time so that they can make a smooth transition. And one such case was a behavioral issue where we were able to, because of mental issues and behavioral issues, we were able to come to a compromise that did allow our client, who did not have anywhere to go and would be very difficult to rehouse, to stay in, because we were able to come to a compromise that fit both parties. So that is a success with specific to the housing mediation that we were able to do. Does that answer your question? I like to use specific examples because it helps people kind of see what it looks like in the real world.
Well, the question I have basically is, you avoid evictions, is that correct? Or you try to avoid evictions?
We do, and a lot of, yes, we do when an eviction has been filed, but a lot of our work with housing mediation is to even prevent the eviction before it's filed with mediation through the eviction resolution pilot program.
Right, because as we know, when you get an eviction on your record, that's you're blackballed, so to speak. But I'm wondering, do you fund these renters that can't come up with their rent, or do you just save them from an eviction? Because in my thinking, they're going to get evicted eventually. Is that right?
That's not necessarily the case, because a lot of it is behavioral or issues between the landlord and the tenant. So the example that we use, it's not necessarily an eviction because they're behind on rent. It's there is like an impasse where they can't come together, and we help them come to a compromise so that they can stay in the space.
So this is not for lack of rent. This is behavioral stuff.
It could be.
Yes, it could be a lack of rent or lack of rent in addition to other issues. So it's complex in that it's not just non-payment of rent or lack of rent issues. And if it is non-payment of rent, then we would negotiate either an additional move-out time or lower in the payments, because there could be disputes with the rental payments.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Are there any other questions about the Snohomish County Legal Services and how it relates to housing? Okay, thank you, Jane. Sue?
So I forget if it was Cathy or Larissa who proposed swapping it a bit to make
Larissa.
Larissa, thanks. To make ARC 30, it's 35 and kids 30. Are people okay with that?
Yes.
I am.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else in that category before we move on to basic services? Okay, so as I mentioned, there is a category called services mental health. So this isn't necessarily tied to homelessness, but it is a priority of mental health services. So so hand in hand, it's a mental health support program. Basically, it's a support group providing mental health education in Spanish, which there are very few of so these types of support programs for those who speak Spanish. So their score is above average. It is a high priority. Unfortunately, due to limited funds, staff is recommending that this be supported at their reduced ask amount of $10,000. Child Strive, the community family counseling for Casino Road. Another good agency, good program, infant and early childhood counselor, but it is also culturally specific. So it is also benefiting different cultures, and it's above average high priority, but again, limited funds. We recommended the same award as for Hand in Hand for their mental health program of $10,000. So this is one I touched upon earlier, the Compass Health Cocoon House partnership to provide counseling services at the shelter for youth. And it is kind of a lower than average score, but high priority. And so we basically have given it a full award because we did not fund the emergency, well, it is not recommended for funding for the emergency motel voucher program because of their request that this be the priority for funding. So, so that is recommended for full funding. And the last one in this category is the Bridgeways MAP program. And this program is supports the court system and peer support for those in the system. And it's kind of a lower than average score, but it is a high priority and a high need and large impact. And the court system is not able to support this important program for the city. And we have recommended full funding for this program.
I would like to see Hand in Hand and Child Strive get another 10 grand put on each one of their awards and take that from Compass Health and Bridgeways. Yeah,
I agree.
So just to clarify, then that puts this at 17,500, and that puts this at 30,000.
yeah.
No,
the
that puts
Compass
this at
Health,
27,500. Sorry.
I mean, Compass Health budget is almost $3 million. So this is less of an impact to them than it is a great impact to Hand in Hand and Child Strive. So that's
and serving a diverse community that needs support.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just because they're little organizations doesn't mean they don't do a tremendous amount of good work.
Absolutely true.
Or littler. I shouldn't have said littler.
It does look like we have a hand raised from one of our agency representatives. And we don't have any agency questions at this time. We can either invite that for the discussion at this point, or we can open that up during what will be the public hearing portion when we open up for just general comments. Would the committee like to hear?
I'd like to save it for the public feedback part. I don't know what everybody else wants to do, but.
You're the chair. You make the call. That's awesome. Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to save it for the public discussion.
Well, Susan, real quick, Sue was muted and trying to say something too, so I want to make sure we.
Well, since we let the legal people speak, is the person who had a comment one of these four that we're currently discussing?
They would be representative of Bridgeways.
Then it seems appropriate, since we're discussing them, to let them give input, since we did the same thing on the legal. I don't know.
But we had a question for the legal person. I don't know that we have a question at this point. If we have a question, then we would ask. If we don't have a question, we have a forum or a structure that allows the public to feedback.
I'm sorry, I may have gotten the organization wrong. I think it actually might have been Compass Health and not Bridgeways. My apologies.
That's the reason I'm suggesting that we wait. There aren't any questions for them at this point. Unless you have one, Sue.
I'd be gaming the system if I just invented a question at this point.
Oh.
So
I will say that the formal recommendation for allocations is going to come after public comment.
yeah, so we can still tweak this because it's possible that we give a little bit more to the last two and, give the other two 15 instead of 20. So there's room to dicker based on what we see as we go along. These are not firm numbers yet, so.
This looks good. What, Chair? Please guide us in funding recommendation.
We're ready for the next section, the next priority.
Okay, so this is the final category. It is the other category. Clothes for Kids, a great program. They had a little lower than average score. Unfortunately, it does not really meet a priority, so staff is not recommending funding at this time for that program. The Child Advocacy Center of Snohomish County at Dawson Place, promoting free child advocacy services. This is a difficult one. It's a very important program. But kind of the concern, it does have a higher than average score, but not really a priority met because the funds are for staffing for community outreach and both in person and through, social media, digital media. So it's not like a direct service being provided. So staff at this point is not recommending funding for that program.
Can I ask a question? Is Clothes for Kids, what's the old name of that outfit?
School Bell.
School Bell, that's what I thought.
No,
Operation School Bell. Is it the same
Yes. Yeah.
No, this is a program based in Linwood, Clothes for Kids. They've been around for a long time, but they serve Everett School District kids as well.
What
So
happened
Clothes
to
for Kids
School
is that
Bell?
shop. Well, Clothes for Kids is that shop in Linwood where people can go and shop based on a checklist of things. So
Yeah.
kids can get school clothes, and sometimes they even have stuff for parents, which is really cool. So they can grab a few things. There's even baby stuff sometimes, but you get to pick out your own things.
The
Right,
committee may
and-
be thinking of Assistance League, which had a similar program with School Bell, Operation School Bell.
Right,
So that was the Everett-based one that you used to see a lot, was the Assistance
Yeah.
League Everett's Operation School Bell,
So
and we
they
don't
didn't
have a
join-
proposal. No.
Oh,
this is not-
they don't.
It's-
Oh, okay. All
Okay,
right.
so it's similar but not the same. And
Yeah.
thank you for clarifying on Dawson because I would have been disappointed not to fund them, but seeing as to the intent of the funds, it's more clear why we're not funding them. Because if it was direct services, I would have a different opinion. So I can live with not funding them, given that it's for the social outreach.
Okay. Well, I just want to say that we have priorities on what we're to do to spend this money, but the word is priority, not absolutely.
Right.
Close for Kids is a good deal. What they do for kids, because at these ages, not being dressed properly is horrible. Just
Yeah,
horrible. It's
I think
not a
what's helpful
priority
is-
like eating, but still.
Yeah, I think what's helpful is they're not the only game in town. So there's several clothing programs that people have access to.
Yeah.
There is that.
Just saying.
I know, yeah, I hear you.
there any other comments at this time, or questions or clarifications?
We didn't thumbs up whether we wanted to move the zeros across.
We did not.
We didn't.
One, two.
What happens if I put my, what
And
happens
we
if I do
don't,
this?
and we don't do it.
You mean I'd stop the whole machine from moving forward?
For a
I mean, I
minute,
have the power to do that?
for a minute.
Yeah, I'll do this. I'll get in trouble.
We would just mute you and turn your video off, Greg.
That's what I figured. Oh, God. Okay.
So, Chair, as there are all tentative allocations, would the committee like to revisit the entire funding sheet at this time?
I believe we would like to.
And I apologize in advance for our viewers. So what I'm going to do is, if it's okay with the committee, I'm going to hide the score only because we need to be able to see all of the spreadsheet, and for Zooming purposes. And so let me just have a moment to stop sharing so that I don't make this visually rough for people as we do this. So let me just have this quick second. Technical break. Would the committee like for me to keep the reduced funding amount on the screen?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And would the committee like for me to keep the staff funding recommendation, understanding that we already have some of those adopted in the committee funding column?
Yes.
Since we changed very few, do we need it?
That's my question. Would you all like to see it?
I don't know. I'm a visual person, so.
I think we only changed those.
Yeah,
Two.
we
The
only
last-
changed
yeah.
like two.
Okay.
Two.
I can always expand it again, but just
Okay.
for saving us on, just to make it so our viewers at home can help to see stuff. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So I will share again.
Cool.
So now we see,
It's kind of little.
I know it's going to be little.
Okay. Okay. That's fine.
Trying to get all of this in for one. So we see that there's $268,700 allocated under the funding recommendation column.
Go away.
I can blow this up so that it's bigger. However, we will not be able to see the whole sheet.
No, it's good.
And then for housing and basic services and other, we have our allocations at $85,000 for housing and $97,500 for basic services with no funds remaining.
Oh, well.
Is there any other discussion that we want to go back to basic services or take money from homelessness? You know, where did this is always an awkward moment for me, but I guess we should just look at it and see how we feel about it.
Yeah, well, and we didn't let the Compass people talk, but they had said that they wanted their full ask, and that's why they gave up the vouchers. And
Right.
Then now we've reduced them by 10. I still want Hand in Hand and Child Strive to have more than we gave them. I personally could live with giving them each 15 and keeping Compass at their full ask, given that they gave up the other one.
Okay.
But I don't know about the other people, what
Well,
they think.
can we play with that number?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I actually think that's a really good idea because then you hit both of their minimums.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's a
And
good
then-
idea.
And then you could take it from a service up top here, like,
Well, we
Safe
don't have
food.
to.
We don't have to.
We don't have
Oh.
to.
You don't
Just
have-
we,
You have
they,
leftover?
the initial recommendation for hand in hand, the city had said 10, we're bumping it to 15. We're not giving the full ask, but we're giving more than they said. And the same thing with Child's, we're giving them
Hi there.
15 out of
Somebody
20.
just-
That's still pretty good. And then the other one, they already compromised in one category, and then we did take a little bit away from Bridgeway. So it seems like we tweaked it without negatively, dramatically impacting any one of them.
Right.
If we wanted to, I was just looking in the housing and emergency shelter, and if we were looking even to bump those to a little bit more, Faith Food Bank has 2 grants that we've fully funded in this, which I think are wonderful programs, but those are also places I was thinking were possible money to juggle. Their pallet shelter and their food both are fully funded at 40 yeah, no 25.
No, we
25
only
and
gave
40.
them 25 out of 40.
Yeah.
So we've
I
already given them a
apologize.
pretty good hit.
I want to tell Michael Hannon, we'll get to you. Thank you for raising your hand. We'll get to you in a little bit for your advocacy for your program. Thank you for raising your hand.
Oh,
I don't know. And again, I'm not trying to dominate the discussion here, but it seems like by giving them a little more than the city said, but not quite what they needed, we still have approached, making their pots bigger and still close to fully funded the bigger asks below them. So I personally feel good about that, but others may feel
So
differently.
Sue, can you tell me what you and Ben are suggesting? I was preoccupied with.
Well, what we just did a minute ago.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think we need to put more in the pot. Ben had talked about
Great.
maybe taking it from sorry.
whoops.
Snow globe.
What's in that cup you're drinking from?
Water, just plain water. Anyway, I'm good with 15 and 15 and not needing more money. And if you don't do what I want, and I'll get you.
Agreed. I think that's great, Sue. Also, can we make a note of the minutes for this to go on our blooper gag reel? The end of the year one. Are we going to do an end of the year gag reel?
Well, now I'm going to. Yes. Thank you for that, Ben. It's great.
Yes, absolutely. Good.
That's what I get for talking too much.
Time this line is sick. So that being said, is there any other discussion for this this priority, for the housing priority for funding changes?
No.
I'm good with what we got there.
So homelessness priority, no changes. Housing and basic services, you guys just revisited, but again, I want to confirm, do we have any proposed changes?
No.
Seeing head shakes.
Nope.
Okay. Chair, I'm going to close sharing the funding recommendations.
Okay. So I think we're closing committee discussion about the funding recommendations at this time. And we're going to open our public hearing portion. I need a motion and a second, please.
I move that we open the discussion to the public meeting.
I second it.
All in favor, thumbs up. Okay, it's unanimous. We will now open for public discussion.
So let's not have everybody jump at once. So let's do it a little orderly. If you are an agency representative and you would like to participate or provide a quick comment, we do ask that you try to be brief and succinct. Typically, the standard is no more than 3 minutes or so. And please raise your hand on your icon or unmute yourself if you would like to speak, and we will try to go through. I know that Michael has been having his hand raised for a while, so at this time, Michael, if you would like to unmute yourself, please, and state your name and organization that you represent.
Hi everyone. I'm Michael Hannon. I'm the marketing and development manager at Bridgeways. Can I turn on my camera? Is that okay for the meeting?
That'd be fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I figured I'd let you put a face to the name. I just wanted to say thank you for everyone for the work you're doing. I know it's not easy, deciding where funding is going. I of course would love to advocate for Bridgeways for the MAP program if possible to get the full amount requested. Our budget actually is about $50,000 for the Everett program. So we were already taking a $10,000 reduction. Last year we were fully funded at $50,000, and the year prior as well. The program has been happening since 2014, and we've seen a lot of success. So I just would love if the group would maybe reconsider if that's possible. Of course it's a tough decision, so I appreciate any consideration. Just lastly, I'll yield my time. I just wanted to share that we've had a 92% reduction in recidivism with our enrollees this year, which recidivism, for those who don't know, is just a fancy word for encounters with law enforcement. So we've had great success, great support from the municipal judges in Everett and the city of Everett. So just to put that in the ring for consideration, I appreciate
Good.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. You can lower your hand and mute yourself again. Then we will then invite Lisa. And Lisa, again, if you can state your name and the organization that you are here to represent, that would be great.
Hi, I'm Lisa Flynn. I'm Vice President of the Board of Directors for Clothes for Kids. And I appreciate all the nice things you said. And you're right that clothing is really important to children of all ages. I just wanted to let you know that so far this year, we've served over 3,100 students, and we have over 1,100 of those come from zip codes that are in Everett. So I know there are other options. We are the only agency where families that can come and do the shopping as a family. They get to choose their own clothing as well. So I just wanted to, put that pitch out there and let you know that Everett students are coming to us and very successfully. So we hope to provide 5,000 wardrobes this school year.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. So again, is there anybody else that would like to speak or have a moment to provide a public comment?
Before we move on, I just wanted to respond to Lisa and say I, as a family, shopped down at that store, and it was awesome, an awesome experience the both times that I went. And then when I did case management, I took clients down to that store. So it is a fantastic program.
Thank you.
It looks as though we have 2 additional hands that have gone up. So first, let's have Matthew, if you can again state your name, full name, and organization that you represent, and then we will go to Roxana.
Good evening. I'm Matt McLaughlin from Dawson Place. I really appreciate all the time and effort you guys put into this process. I know it's difficult as well. Really, I'll just give you an update of what's going on at Dawson Place. Now that I've been here and been through the entire meeting, I've got to say something, right? So last year we increased our outreach program from 0.8 to 2.65 FTE because kids weren't going to school, less kids were being referred to us, so we had to find other ways to get to them. And so the program is to get the kids and the families to direct services. We also started a parenting education program. It's free as well, and it's expanding. We did 4 of those. They're 16-week classes called The Incredible Years, I believe, and we're expanding that to 8 16-week classes next year. And all of these things are fed by the outreach program, both the digital outreach and the in-person outreach. So I understand it doesn't fit into your priorities, but it is really important, and we'll find other funding to make sure that all the kids that and families that need our help know that we exist and they can come get it. Last year, or to date in 2021, we have served 255 families from Everett, and that's out of about 900 total. So we've really grown. We're trying to make a bigger impact, and we really appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Okay, Roxana, if you can unmute yourself and go ahead and introduce your full name and the agency that you represent.
Hi, my name is Roxana, and I'm from Faith Food Bank. Thank you very much for funding our pallet shelter to Faith Family Village. We're excited to be able to bring parents and kids into a program instead of having them sleeping out on the street or in a car. And we're very excited, and we're going to work hard to make this a shining example so that other churches and groups will follow our lead, because there's a lot of kids out there who need a regular place to stay. And Interfaith Shelter is working with us to move them to permanent housing. And thanks for the second program that I work with, which is Everett Hot Meals Coalition. This year we've been able to open 2 hot meal programs in South Everett. Before, they were only in North Everett. So we're happy to keep expanding and helping our neighbors in need. But thank you for all the work you've done.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roxana. Okay, it looks like as though Kim, you are next. If you can please state your name and organization, please.
Hello, my name is Kim Gorney. I'm the Executive Director of Washington Kids in Transition. My first time being funded by your organization, so I truly appreciate it. Just wanted to tell you a little bit about us. We work with the McKinney-Vento students in the Everett School District. If a family resource advocate, and our main focus is preventing homelessness. So if a family resource advocate needs something to us, they can reach out and we can get it to them generally the same day. We also have a distribution center located in Linwood that social workers or family resource advocates are welcome to come down and get emergency, whatever they need. I invite you to come down and see us because we got a pretty cool program. And I just want to thank you for funding us. We really appreciate it. And I promise you we will make that money work for the kids in our district. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Good,
Kim.
thank you.
Okay, Jim, please state your full name and organization.
Hi, I'm Jim Dean. I'm from the Interfaith Family Shelter in Everett here, and I want to thank you for all your hard work. But what I really wanted to point out was I was trying to figure out how those 2 scores came out differently. I wrote both those grants and I knew how they were working together, and I thought, what did I do wrong in the other one? I must have left something out.
It was your punctuation.
The other part of this that I want to say is this may be for you the first time going through this particular process. I work with grants online for a lot of different agencies and a lot of different grants. And I just want to thank the city for finally moving into this world, because you will find it will make all the difference in the world for us. It makes a difference for us too, because you can make sure that you've got everything done and turned in. And I'm not running down to the office and meeting Vicky down at the bottom of the elevator with all my paperwork. And so I want to just thank you for making those moves and those changes, and Kimber for your great explanation as to why those changes were there. So thank you very much for your work and for your continued support for these interesting and fun programs that we're working on.
Great.
Thank you so much, Jim. Okay, Terry, you are next. Please state your full name and organization.
Yes, I am Terry Clark, and I write grants for Child Strive. And again, I'd just like to, as everyone has done, thank you for your work. It's clearly difficult, and I appreciate your thoughtfulness. And I also appreciate your funding for our program. And I just wanted to clarify that the individual counseling and all of the group programming that Catalina provides is done in Spanish. And she represents the individuals that she serves because she's an immigrant and has that lived experience. She also has a child with special needs, which helps her be able to relate to those families in a different way. So just to clarify that, make sure you understood that, and I really appreciated you getting us back up to 15,000, which is where you funded us last year. So I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terry. Okay, if anybody else would like to provide a comment, this is your last chance to do so, and I'll give another minute just in case someone can't find their icon. But otherwise, it looks as though we have accepted all public comments. Staff, did we receive any emailed into submission?
No, I will double check, but not at this time.
Okay, if that's the case, then I need a motion and a second to close the public hearing portion.
I move that we close the public hearing section.
I second it. I second that we close it.
Does everybody agree with the thumbs up? Then we are now closed in our public comment section. Okay, committee discussion and response to these comments that we just heard. How are we feeling right now about our decision for funding so far?
It sounds like the two agencies that we didn't fund understand it, the last two that spoke, Dawson. It still kind of hurts my heart not to give Dawson money because I do feel that perhaps when we're thinking of social media, we forget that that's how do you get the people who need the services to get in to get it when they're not in school, because typically the referrals are done on a school-based system. So I don't know if that changes our thinking on our decision or not, but they did seem to understand, and it seemed like he indicated that they could probably get their funding elsewhere, because Dawson does have good fundraising efforts, but it did change my opinion slightly. Go ahead. I
have a question. So I know that our priorities, we established them last year. For the next funding round next year, can we include, and the reason that one of the reasons they didn't get chosen for funding was that it didn't really match, because the social media piece was part of that. With COVID and distancing, and can we maybe amend that? Do we have an opportunity to do that next year?
For community needs, or for establishing priority needs? Yeah. So let's just revisit that real quick. So the work that we did for public engagement for the consolidated plan, that is the long range 5-year guiding document that guides a lot of our first kind of primary community needs that we're overall working towards, a 5-year goal for identifying priority needs. And we went through a 1.5 years worth of engagement on that. We went out in the public. So most of those are fairly well vetted. We did online surveys, hard surveys, in-person meetings, you name it, we try to do it. Social media surveys, all this kind of stuff. That being said, that was all, of course, pre-COVID. And so now we're dealing with the fact that there may be different needs out there in the community. Agencies may have had to change service models to be able to accommodate what other needs that they're seeing. When we go through and establish our community needs, and which we'll do again in late July and August, mid-August probably, At that time, we can definitely revisit not only the efforts that we do to try and help to establish those community needs, but if the committee is hearing that there are other needs out there, let's bring that into the discussion when those priorities are established. The 5-year consolidated plan document is a guiding document for us to look at. If we would like to revise it, it is a bit of work, and so we would want to bring that back to the committee, and it does require a whole new public engagement process for that, but it is doable. So yes, we can absolutely address our community needs for future funding years.
So one of the things that I read in almost every application was that there was, the challenges were for their organization was, you know, COVID related, like they had to find other ways to go and have community outreach or to be able to address or interact with the community they were serving. And so that's partly why I'm saying this, and also because I'm a staunch advocate for Dawson Place as well, and the work that they do in the community, and understand that we have a list of priorities that we've created and all those other really great things. So, but that doesn't mean that we can't be flexible for next year and make some changes.
Correct.
Okay.
Greg?
We tend to follow problems that the city of Everett has and then try to fix them by throwing money at it. But you know, I live in a part of Everett, we've got a real bad crime problem here. And the crime problem, because I speak to police more frequently than I'd like to admit. And yesterday I had a problem on my property, and I had a police officer in here, and I asked him, what is with all the homeless people all of a sudden? Are they all drug addicts? And he said to me, I have never encountered one of them that didn't have drug paraphernalia on their person. So that means to me that we have a really bad drug problem in Everett. And what we're doing is treating people for homelessness. We're not treating the drug problems as much. There's not enough funding going towards drug programs, in my opinion. But I don't see that many people coming forward with those problems. But what we're doing is we're not fixing anything. We're putting Band-Aids on problems that need to be worked at on the front end. We got to get stuff done in schools to educate new kids about drug abuse and so on and so forth. But anyway, my point is this. Are we ever going to get away from funding homelessness and meals? Are we ever going to get out of this
cycle? It's a great question.
This cycle. And I don't think we are if we keep doing what we're doing.
Right.
And I think that we should go into the community and advocate. Does anybody have a drug program? I mean, you know, Coon House does to some extent, and fix this problem. The city of Everett is going to hell right now. I don't know if you know that or not.
I was going to add that the Recovery Cafe does a lot of work too, with substance use and housing and food. So they're
but they're not a priority. Is I guess my point.
Well, and the homelessness programs do try and connect people with services to deal with their actual problems that are causing the homelessness. So it isn't just give them a house. I mean, that's where the social workers embedded in their programs. So to only give them a house is like what you say, Greg. But if you provide them with shelter and then give them the tools to address their issues, and some of those programs are doing that. Even like Interfaith and some of the other ones that, I mean, almost all of them have a social service component. If they don't work. You know, so it is.
And we're funding so much for kids that are suffering in homelessness, like Cocoon House and other aspects. And it's like, that's a great intervention that keeps kids stable in school. So that is intervention so that you don't end up with drug problems later.
And we'll see those in the future.
Or other
we won't see those
issues
today,
later, whatever
but that's like later on as the kids grow up, we'll see those positive impacts.
Yeah, exactly.
Which unfortunately circles back to Dawson House, though, Dawson Place, that if they're abused in the home when they're very small, then that leads to drug and other issues. So I feel like we have, even in our current system, some flexibility. So I don't know. I don't like to shake the cage at this late game, but it does bother me some that we're not giving Dawson.
Homelessness is a 7-layer dip. It's not one thing. It is not drugs. It is not just this. It's economic. It's inequitable. It's racism. It's a whole set of socioeconomical criteria. Once you're on the street, you're probably going to get involved in using drugs just to be able to make it every day, which is sad and it's horrible. So those two things don't always go together, but they go together because of the way that you have to survive on the street. So let's keep it in mind that we're doing our best. We're making impact. We're addressing what we can. And I think what you just said is all of you is really important for keeping in mind why equitable reading of those applications is super important, so that we can fund with a good heart, good conscience, these agencies that are boots on the ground doing the work. Our work's not easy, because saying no to somebody is just like, I'm going to go in my room and cry later. Oh. But that's my bleeding heart liberal self, my mother would say. But we're doing our best. Right?
Well,
we're not fixing anything.
We owe it to our community, and we owe it to each other and our commitment to do this, to read every application. Well, and I'm preaching to the choir because you all did it, but we gotta go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and it can be demoralizing because it can feel like we're not fixing all the things right now, and that's impossible. Eating the elephant is impossible. But I think it's helpful to keep in mind the scope of our specific work, what we can and can't do, and then support those programs that are doing even more than what we're doing.
I get to summarize my tirade. I just like to say a little bit of money, maybe instead of funding the homelessness food part or the homeless shelter part a little bit, put a little bit over here for some preventative programs that can stop this mess, because we're not fixing anything. All we're doing is running around with Band-Aids right now. And that's demoralizing.
Prevention is key. Prevention is key.
I would want a Band-Aid.
Right. A Band-Aid is helpful. A Band-Aid is valuable, but it's not everything. And yeah, no, I hear you.
A wound will never heal.
Well, human needs is not the only source of funds. We got to realize that too. We are a piece of a bigger puzzle. So we do what we can. And having done these for years, it's always hard when you start with a big pot of money and you have to funnel it to less than the give. And so I think it will be important to debrief, not tonight, but at some point, the process of Amplifund, because if that is an integral part of the system, then we need to be sure that how we're approaching it is netting the intended results. Because I know for myself, I went through and graded everything and saved it but didn't submit, and then I went back and regraded it all because I had a feeling I graded too low. So then I went back and changed my scores, but I never really had a sense of, because I was blind to what other people were doing, but I never had a sample to say, okay, this is what a 5 should look like, this is what a 3 should look like, and I had an intuition. And so I didn't know I had a choice not to score. I thought I had to score. So I'm surprised that we didn't all come through. I'm disappointed that we didn't all come through, because because whatever my bias is, it was consistent throughout. So it would have impacted the whole pile the same, because my bias, I mean, either score them all or score none. But it just, I'm disappointed that everybody wasn't able to fulfill that. So hopefully we'll be able to do better on that next time. But, you know, again, Greg, we do what we can, and it's the best we can do. At least we have a pot of money to be able to figure out what to do with.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so thank you for that lovely, passionate discussion. So where are we at with the numbers that we have come up with so far? Does anybody feel like we want to change something, or?
My main concern was the 20,000 for Vision Church, so I'm glad that they chimed in. That was my main concern, was hearing from them what their opinion was on that decision. But I'm good with the rest of what we've done.
I think we made thoughtful decisions, and even though it hurts my heart, I did hear Dawson Place saying in this round they understood why we didn't fund them. And we have funded other programs of theirs in the past. So if they give us programs that meet the criteria of what we're able to fund, I'm confident we'll fund them in the future. So I would be confident if we entertained a motion to accept it as we have made, the changes that we made as we went along.
Right, and so without further discussion, we could do that now, I believe.
Would the committee like for me to reshare the worksheet one last time, or do we feel like that's not necessary?
Well, I think we've worked it as well as we can. I mean,
yeah, I agree.
We could work it again, but I mean, why? We've done our work. And
I move that we accept the worksheet that we that was in process at the meet, as it stands at this moment.
As listed.
As listed.
Okay. We need a second.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye, aye.
No. Okay, then we have accepted and passed the funding recommendations as listed.
Work, guys.
Woo!
Nice job.
You're almost done. You're almost done. Just
almost.
We have a few more.
We have one more piece of business to do.
Okay.
It's that time of year. This is my last meeting to be chair. And thank you all for pushing me into the job.
Why are you disappearing?
Because my camera freezes and I hate when I get stuck with my mouth open or something. So it is time to pass the imaginary gavel to another chair.
I thought we did that in the summer.
No, we did that last year in February, and you guys pushed me over the edge and helped me find my way to this position. And now I'm gracefully backing the heck out. Anyway. Okay, I have a nomination that I would like to make. Does anybody else have any nominations, or we're catching you guys off guard? Guess we're catching you off guard. I would like to nominate Cathy Lynott to take my job next year.
Perfect.
Yay. Are there any other nominees? Okay, I nominated her. Somebody has to second.
I second.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yay!
We need a vice chair. I don't have a nomination for vice chair. Anybody want to be vice chair?
Could you carry into vice chair? You did such a great job chairing this year, Susan.
Well, thanks, Ben. That makes me feel so happy.
Yeah, having
I've appreciated it.
Positions, it's always nice when the vice chair is in the wings to help the chair. So if you don't want to be, and I myself have done it so much that I know you need flesh.
You were my vice chair.
Right. So that's why I'm encouraging you to be her vice chair, because
Okay, I'll do it.
It does help to have some scaffolding.
Thank you so much. I'd be happy to be the vice chair.
But Ben, you've been on this committee a long time. Your turn's coming.
Yeah, Ben.
Listen, this is a lot like the PTA, man. I am not putting my hand up, because once you get that hand up, you're in.
Yeah. Well, there's a target on your back. Just be aware.
Now, we don't meet tomorrow night, right?
No.
No. So for anybody that's well, so for real quick, and so Chair, if it's okay for me to, for our past chair,
anymore.
if it's okay for me to move forward, chairs, past chair, current chair, to move forward in the next item.
All the chairs, yes.
All the
Okay.
chairs.
So thank you so much for the agencies that are that have attended the call tonight. We will not hold a public hearing tomorrow. So that is now done. All of the items and action items have been addressed in this meeting. Thank you so much to the committee. And I hope that everybody enjoys what's now a free Wednesday evening and early afternoon. Okay, so now moving forward, next steps as we hold the snow globe close and dear. Next steps are that this will go to the City Council for adoption through a resolution, and then we will be using Amplifund to allocate the actual awards. And so now we have this wonderful opportunity for committee members to continue to be able to look in. You still have access to Amplifund, so you'll be able to look in and track and see how spin downs are going, how the agencies are doing in their accomplishments. That's something that allows you to continue to see the progress for that. And then we also have this now wonderful ability to have a streamlined relationship between staff and the agency for getting pay requests done, for getting performance plans done, for doing all this other stuff. And then we have this wonderful ability to create public reports at some point. So maybe when we do our community needs, we'll be able to pull some wonderful reports out of Amplifund and present those for the committee, and being able to look at some of the feedback that we're currently doing to address community needs. And that's something that I know previously the committee has always wanted to know is how people are doing in their human needs grants that they currently have, the spin downs that they're doing in their accomplishments. And of course, that used to all be tracked by hand. And now we have this wonderful system that's going to provide it for everybody instantaneously. So those are next steps with the award process. Now, moving forward, another thing that's going on is that we do have open vacancies on the committee, as I know that some of our most members should be aware of. We have gone through active recruitment, and staff has recently wrapped up a series of interviews with some of our potential candidates for the committee positions. And so we will be providing our formal recommendation for the appointed positions in middle of this month, in the next week or two, and then we'll be giving that to administration. And following the installment of the new city council members in early January, in mid-January, City Council will formally adopt all the citizen committee appointments. And so you will see that you will have new committee members joining you. Yes, very yay, in mid-February and moving into next year. And so because of that, what we would like to do is have a tentative public meeting, not a hearing, but a public meeting again in February for everybody to come together, for the committee, the new committee members to become a part of the committee, and for all of us to also revisit the 2022 annual action plan so that we're reminded again of all the projects that we're going to be doing. Following that, okay, so 1 second, and then I'll take a breath. So following that, we would like to have a follow-up for Amplifund and a larger discussion with the committee. And I'm not quite sure if that's going to be best that we do that in late spring or early summer. Some of that is also falling around the time when staff has to deal with a lot of deadlines from HUD. And so that's at late April and early May. So we may not meet again after February until spring or early summer. But at that time, we do want to get everybody together and start really diving into utilizing Amplifund more so for the reviewers, because we're going to be setting it up to now include the state and federal applications.
Oh, goody.
So as fun as this was for, exactly, Sue, as fun as this was for our municipal dollars, it was a really good thing for us to be able to use the human needs funds through this process, because we need to make it absolutely airtight when we roll in our state and federal application process and our awards. So just all the feedback that you have tonight, go ahead and give me that feedback in an email, send it to Vicki and me as it's applicable for what you're dealing with while it's still fresh in your mind, and know that we're going to revisit all of this in the next few months. But I do appreciate that everybody that was able to get into the system did. And if you were one of the few people that were able to review all applications, thank you so much. And if you didn't, that's okay. We're going to continue to improve. And I look forward to everybody doing it the next time. So that is the last update I have for staff updates. Sue, what was your comment?
Well, actually, my question was going to be if we were going to have the follow-up on the Amplifund, and I was going to recommend that if we're not doing it till spring, like you said, that we write down our experience now, because it'll get foggy by then. But just from an English teacher's point of view, that when we do the next round of training for a refresher for us and for the new people coming on board, that we're really clear that perhaps we have some examples of what's a 5, what's a 3, what's a 1. So then you can stack your grade, and then make sure we understand the rationale. Are we grading the paperwork? Are we grading the whole process? What is the purpose of the scoring? And the scoring has a bigger role than I might have realized. I mean, I knew we were supposed to be scoring them, but I wasn't 100% clear that the scoring was going to be the basis for the funding, and so so I'm kind of glad I went back and bumped my scores up. But so I think just making sure that the training and retraining is thorough enough, and that we have time to practice with the system some, to make sure that we're on the same page, and somehow making it very clear that if we commit to being on this committee, then we have to commit to following through, because it may have impacted some of our decisions that not everybody was able to do it. And, you did give us plenty of time, and your advice to not do it all in one sitting was well made, because, we needed to stagger it out, and I know I did. But, getting close to Christmas made it a little harder for some people, I'm sure. But so it'll be important that we really make sure the training is thorough, and especially as we bring on board people who won't have done it before. So Thank you for making sure we get that in.
This is my last meeting, I believe.
Oh,
I'm retired, I think. Yes, right?
I believe
Kimber?
that this is, yes, I believe that this is your last
it
meeting.
for me. So it's been I got on the first committees of the city, I think in 2008. And I've been on one committee or another all these years. And it's about time I left, I think.
Oh.
You guys do the right thing and send money to, what?
Oh, sorry.
What? Anyway, so this is it for me. Then my last meeting ever. So we'll keep the good work going, and remember prevention.
Well,
I look forward to getting a public comment on our community needs for next year, Greg, and I'll leave it at that.
Well,
That's right.
You sometimes
I have to start up a
hard
nonprofit. I think I'll do that. Start up a nonprofit.
Well, you're good at asking the hard questions, Greg, and not letting us take it all for granted. And Mary's not on it anymore, and she was always very astute at, so we will miss you. Now I need you to tell me how long I'm on it for, because I've been on it forever too. But I think I'm a technicality because we merged and changed.
Yeah.
But seems like I'm a dinosaur on this committee now. So anyway, but we shall miss you, Greg.
Oh, thank you. Something to think about is a person can work for the city of Everett, not Kember, but let's say a city councilman can work for the city of Everett and get paid, and not very much money, but they get paid and they do their jobs. But when they leave their jobs, oftentimes they get a park named after them. I propose our volunteers get a park named after them, because we do all this for nothing. Do it for free. We don't get paid for this, and this is really
a good feeling in your heart.
There's a Graham's garden somewhere.
We need a few more parks in Everett, and they should be named after volunteers.
Okay.
Greg's garden.
Those are my final words.
Good idea.
You should make the final motion to adjourn this meeting, Greg. Just those should be your final meeting.
To adjourn. I'll just hit the little leave button.
He likes to second. He doesn't like to first. He likes to second.
That's my thing. I'm never first. I'm always second. So
So new chair.
New
Why don't
chair.
you lead us in adjourning the meeting?
Okay, so
I seconded.
He can't second. It hasn't been made. The motion hasn't been made
you
yet.
read my mind, Greg. That's amazing. Yeah, I need a first to adjourn the meeting. And then
I
a second.
move to adjourn the meeting.
Seconded.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
adjourned.
all.
Chamber.
See you later.
Thank you. Have a happy holiday season.
Vicky, what-
Happy